Welcome back to the Ruched YouTube channel. In today's class, we'll be learning how to make this beautiful draped skirt. You can see the drapes that we have, and we achieve this using the slash and spread method. It's a very simple technique, and I'm sure you get it. This is what you like to learn. Kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so to make this mini skirt, I folded my paper into two, and I'll be drafting my front block, and I also use this for my back block also. So now here is my starting point, and then I'll measure my waist to hip measurement, which is 8 inches in this case, and the full length that I want is not a long skirt, so I'll be stopping it around 17 or 18 inches. So I'm stopping it around 18 inches, and then I'll make all that into a straight line. Okay, so I have my hip and my full skirt length measurement. So on my waistline, I'm taking my waist measurement. The waist I'm working with is 30 inches. Divided by 4 is going to give me 7.5. So I'm just going to measure my 7.5. I'm not adding any dots to this. And then I'll add 1 inch or 1.5 inches for my seam allowance. The hip I'm working with is 38 inches. 38 divided by 4 is going to give me 9.5. So this is 9.5, and then I'm adding 1.5 inches seam allowance to it. Then I'm also just going to, if you want it, if I can just remove like ½ inch from this, and then I'll make this 9 inches and add my seam allowance. So I'm going to connect all these together. Okay, so I'll connect the waist to hip, and then from the hip I'm going to connect to the hem line, and then I'll do the same for the allowance. Then I'll cut this out. So making this skirt is actually quite simple, it's not so difficult. So once I have that, I'm going to cut this out. Okay, so I'll use this to cut my, so I'm going to label this part the waist, the hip and the hem, because it's not so long, so that you don't confuse the waist with the upper part. So now I'm using this doll face fabric for this skirt, and then I'm just going to place this on this skirt to cut out the back before I do my modification for the front. So now to cut the back, I'm just going to include my zipper allowance before cutting it out. Okay, so you can see I just placed my pattern on it, then I left this for my zipper allowance. So this is the back panel. I'm just going to slash the back part open, then I'll work on the front. So now to work on this front, now we're going to be using slash and spread method, and then I'm going to open up my skirt like this. I'll open up the skirt pattern like this, and then I'm going to draw out my style line. So now the first thing is to note where my curve to be. You can see the curve that we have at the center front, at the center part here. Okay, so you see this curve that we have here. Now I'm going to note it, and I want this curve to be around 2 inches, 2 or 3 inches below my hip line. So let's say you can do 2, 3 or even 4 inches. So I'm doing around 3.5, which is here. So now from that 3.5 inches point, I'm going to connect it to my hem of the other part. You can see the way it just goes like that. You can see how smooth it is. So using my leg pants curve, I'm going to try to find a very smooth curve from that angle. If you cannot take it all at once, you can do it in bits. Then I'm going to connect it like this. So if you want your curves to be higher, you can go up by maybe 1 inch, 1.5 inches, or we can just do, instead of 3 inches, we did 3.5, which is almost 4. So we can do maybe 2.5 inches, so that the curve will show very well. So if we are doing 2.5 inches, we are going to connect it from that point all the way to this point. So because my allowance is in included here, I'm going to start connecting from my zipper allowance area, which I don't actually advise. So I prefer to, if I'm doing a slash and spread, I prefer to just draft my basic bodies separately. So when I'm transferring to my main fabric, I'll just add my allowance. But since the allowance is here already, I'm just going to start it from the allowance area, which is the 2.5 that I want to connect with. I'll connect it from my allowance now, and then connect it downwards like this. So you can see why I said the allowance is not necessary, because because I'm connecting from the allowance now, you can see where the point that I have here on my main shape, main line. Okay, remember this is the actual line, the style line that we are working with, and this is the allowance. So if I'm starting my style line from the allowance, then I place the curve. You can see that it has affected, because what I wish to reduce this by, I wish to go down by 2.5 inches, which is here. So now if I'm starting the 2.5 inches on my allowance area, by the time I get to my actual line, which is this, is now around 3 to 3.5 inches. So what you can do is just chop off, since we already use this to cut our back, and our back is already with allowance. So you can just chop off this seam allowance that you have. So you can just cut off this seam allowance that you have, and then by the time you are transferring this to your fabric, you will note that no allowance. So I'm just going to write add allowance on this, so that I'll know that this pattern does not have any allowance. Then I'm going to take my curve and then connect this to the hem, just as planned. Okay. So now this is connected, and I have this. So I'm going to cut this off. So cutting this off now, this is the new shape of my skirt. So you will need 2 of these to make your full front panel. So you can see what we have here. We have one going like this and the other one going like this. So this slash and spread that I'm doing here, I'm just going to be doing it on the one that is going to be on the upper part, which is this. I'm going to leave the lower part the same way it is, because it's actually not going to show, but you can make your slash and spread on both sides. So now before I do the slash and spread, I'll cut the lower part, which is the one underneath it, before I do all those slash modification on this. I hope you understand. So now I'll place this on my fabric now. I'll cut out the first part of my front bodies. Okay, so I've gone ahead to cut the first part of my skirt, and as you can see, I added the 1.5 inches allowance that I chopped off by the side back, because I've cut it off on my main pattern. So now I'm going to keep this aside also. The next thing now is to draw my style lines. So now this depends on how many style lines you want. You can see what we have here. If you look at this picture as well, this picture where you can see that we have one on the upper part here. We have around 1, 2, 3 or 4 or thereabout, but it still depends on the amount of style line that you want to put. So here now, you can just go to your side and divide it by 4, or you just measure this at random. So the first one, I want it to be maybe 3 inches away from the waist. The subsequent ones can be maybe 1 inch or 1.5 inches before each other. Okay, so now the first one, I measured 3 inches down. This is 3 inches before I started. So my first style line, this is going to be my first. Then the second is this 1.5 inches. Then the next one is 1.5 inches away from the first one, and then this is the last one. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 for my style lines, and then on the other side it's going to be connected to this point also. So you can just measure it, or you can just eyeball how you are going to connect it. So now from the first one now, I'll connect this to the side like this. Okay, then the second one, I'll connect it also. Then the third one. So I'm kind of using like almost the same interval that I use, which is 1.5 inches for the first one. Okay, so But this one, I want it to be a bit lower than the first one, and then this is the last one. So now I have my first style lines, as you can see. So once you have your style line, the next thing is that you're going to take your scissors now and then cut through this. But you're not going to cut it completely. You're just going to leave like a tip on the other side there. Okay, you can see I'm cutting it. So that's the first one, and you can have more style length or less depending on what you want. So this is the second. So this is the fourth, and this is the last one. So doing slash and spread method is actually very easy, and it just helps you to introduce volume to any side you want volume to be. So now we have it. Now the next thing is to spread it. So I think I'll be spreading this directly on my fabric. So now you can spread as much as you want. So you can decide to just spread by maybe 4 inches. So what you do is you place your 4 inches like this, and then the next paper you move it and then place the next 4 inches. Then you spread it out again, and then have 4 inches interval. Then you place it like that. Then the next one also you spread it. You have your 4 inches interval like that. So if 4 inches is too much for you, you can do 3, you can do 2, depending on what you want. So I'm just going to, you can actually do this on a fresh pattern, or you do it directly on your fabric. Okay, so now this is placed on my fabric, and you can see that I've spread it with the 4 inches that I intend to. So now the next thing now is for me to start pleating it. So to pleat it now, you just take this now and then place it on to close up the previous back. And you can see that I added the 1.5 inches allowance back. Please do not forget that, because remember there is no allowance on the pattern. So now you move it from this point, and then you close the spread that you have there. So you can see I am closing this, and then I'm just going to hold this with my pen. Then on the next one now I'll take it here also, and then close this. So it's easier for me this way before I remove my pattern. If you have removed your pattern, all you just need is to place notches at that area where your slash and spread ends, so that you know how you are going to be pleating it. But I just prefer to do this when my pattern is still on it. I think it's easier that way. So the last one now, I'll take it now. I hope you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to fold it over. Now you can see that I've gone back to its original starting size. So once I have this now, I've cleaned it, I can easily remove my pattern from this, and then I'll go back to the machine and hold this pleat with a stitch. Okay, you can see how simple it is to actually make this. It's quite simple. So once you remove your pattern, this is what you're going to be having. Okay, so now if you bring in the other one that we cut before, remember the one that we said you're not going to be adding a slash and spread to, because it's going to be underneath this. So this is it here. So now if you place this on it now, you can see how it looks. So you just match up the upper part together like this. Then after matching it up on the upper part, you arrange your drapes very well, so you can see what you have now. And then this is a complete front part of the skirt. So now you can see the slanting that we have here is showing very well, because I later decided to go with a 2.5 different from my hip line measurement as against the 3.5 that I used earlier. So now what you just need to do now is to sew this together here and here to brace it. Then after that, you pick your skirt pattern. That's the 2 skirt pattern that we cut earlier, which is this. So now you place them on top of each other, so you can see that they also match with it. So this is the first part of the skirt, and this is the other side of the skirt. So now you sew it together using the 1.5 inches allowance that we left, and then you fix a zipper at the center back here. So So it's that simple. So I'll just take it one after the other. I'm just going to, because this is still held with a pin, I've not sewn it yet, so I'm just going to first of all sew the front together to hold it before I sew my back to it. Okay, so now you can see I've closed the zipper allowance up to the area where I'm going to be fixing my zipper, and I sew it on both sides using the allowance that I left. So now I'm going to turn this out, and then by the time I turn it out, we'll see what we have. Okay, so by the time it is turned out, this is what our pattern is looking like now. You can see that we have our drapes on one side and it just goes like that to the other side. So I'll take this to the mannequin now so that we'll see what this is looking like. Okay, so this is what the skirt looks like now. You can see the drapes that we have. It just goes from that point we opened it to the side. You can see, so this is the first one, second, third, and the first one. So you can have more drapes if you want, and this is what it looks like on this side with the drape. You can see the pleating there, and then on the side with the drape, you can see that we do not have any pleating here. It's just straight down like that. It's a very simple skirt to make, and it's really cute. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.